Hey guys, tonight we're heading somewhere warm, steamy. Actually, you're barefoot, walking through a dim, narrow alley that smells like warm sandstone, old incense, and the ghost of someone's garlic breakfast. It's late, the stars are above you, but your attention keeps drifting downward. There's a flickering lantern nailed crookedly to a mud brick wall, casting soft amber light over a sign that's more rust than readable text. This is where the journey begins. The air is thick with a kind of quiet. Not silence, no. Silence is clean and light. This is the quiet of old stones, of histories pressed down and compacted like layers of clay. You duck your head, because the doorway is lower than it should be, and you step into a hallway that tilts just slightly to the left, like it's tired of standing up straight. You're in Persia now. Not the postcard Persia with sapphire domes and lush gardens, but the everyday kind, the 10th century kind, the muddy sandal kind. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, I'd love to know where you're tuning in from and what time it is. Let me know in the comments. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself standing before a hammam, a Persian bathhouse, not the shiny Turkish tourist kind. This one has soot on the ceilings, a donkey tied lazily to a post outside, and a small boy asleep on a pile of firewood, one hand still clutching a sandal. You step past him, and a gust of warm air sighs from within, wrapping around your ankles like a sleepy cat. The floor slopes downward. That's your first hint that this place isn't just a building, it's a descent. Bathhouses were often built below ground, both for insulation and for mystery. You shuffle forward, sandals flapping against the warm tile, and pass a man washing his armpits with a rock, not a pumice stone. A rock. He nods at you like this is perfectly normal, because, for him, it is. You're now in the Sarbina, the entrance chamber. It's cool compared to what's coming. The ceiling is domed, pierced with small holes like a colander for starlight. Through them, dusty shafts of sun pierce the gloom, revealing curls of steam and a pair of old sandals someone's forgotten against the wall. You pick them up, still damp. In the corner, a bathhouse attendant eyes you, his expression somewhere between sleepy and suspicious. He's wearing a towel, a red fez, and exactly no other items of clothing. He gestures toward a pile of cloth wraps, indicating you should disrobe. No lockers here. Your clothes go into a clay cubby, right next to a basket containing an onion, a falcon feather, and someone's empty coin purse. There's a hush here that feels rehearsed. A centuries-old performance of quiet. Talking in hammams was allowed but not encouraged, especially during bathing, and especially not during the ritual quiet period, a still, soundless stretch believed to cleanse the mind as much as the body. So, naturally, someone nearby is humming. You step further in. The air is warmer now, tinged with whetstone and something else, an herbal funk that clings to your skin. Frankincense, fennel, possibly overcooked celery. A young boy walks past with a tray of small clay cups, each filled with something green and steaming. He doesn't offer you one, rude, but understandable. You're new here, and in the social hierarchy of hammams, newcomers are one rung below the guy washing his socks in the corner basin. Historians still argue whether bathhouse customs were more about hygiene or hierarchy. Did people come here to get clean, or to be seen getting clean in the right way? Because, make no mistake, there was a right way. You notice the floor's mosaics now small, faded tiles arranged in a broken geometric pattern that might once have looked like a flower, or a compass, or maybe it's just broken. You follow the petals, which seem to point toward a darker hallway. The steam thickens. You hear a splash, then silence, then another splash, like something large is moving slowly in the next room. You hesitate. A drop of water lands on your shoulder from nowhere. You look up, but the ceiling is dry. You step forward anyway. At this point, you're likely wondering if you're going to survive the night. Probably not. But hey, at least your pores will be incredible. The heat rises. You're sweating now, but not uncomfortably. It feels right. Like your skin has been waiting for this for centuries. You step through a curtain of moisture and enter a chamber that smells like wet marble, burnt olive oil, and secrets. Two men are scrubbing each other's backs with what looks like a giant loofah made from reeds. They don't stop or look at you. They just keep scrubbing. The sound is rhythmic, hypnotic, like a metronome made of sandpaper and grunts. To your right, a clay alcove holds a small candle and something that looks like a doll but turns out to be a bar of ancient soap fat, gray and cracked. It smells like ashes and goat. You pick it up. It squishes slightly. A plaque on the wall written in ornate Kufic script mentions the name of the bathhouse, possibly House of Steam or Place of Silence, depending on your translation. Or it could just be someone's name. Bathhouses were often named after their founders, but also occasionally after the way they smelled, which raises questions you don't want answered. Somewhere, water drips, always just one drip at a time, like a clock you can't see, ticking down to, well, hopefully just bedtime. The heat starts to lull you. Muscles soften. Joints feel less like rusty hinges and more like well-oiled gears. You lean against a warm stone pillar and let your eyes close for just a moment. That's when a voice, soft and scratchy, whispers behind you. You dropped your wrap. You didn't, but you still turn around. No one's there, just steam curling lazily toward the dome above. Just old stone and older silence. You trudge deeper into the heat, wrapped now in little more than damp resolve. The floor beneath you warms the soles of your feet warm like bread just out of the oven. Ahead, the corridor narrows, its stone arch lowering as if testing your willingness to submit. Your body, soaked and softened, moves slower now. You've stopped sweating. That's either a sign of relaxation or the beginning of steam-based delirium. The air thickens further. You reach a heavy wooden door swollen from centuries of moisture. You push, and it moans open to reveal the garmkhane, or hot room. Steam billows out like it's been waiting for a dramatic entrance. Inside, it's like walking into a soft, wet cloud. You can't see more than a few steps ahead, but you hear it all, the drip of condensation, the occasional grunt, a distant splash, and someone quietly humming what might be a lullaby or a spell. The chamber is vast, though the haze makes it intimate. A domed ceiling above is punctured with glass bubbles, pale green and blue discs that catch stray shafts of sunlight and scatter them like underwater starlight. You blink. One of the discs flickers, probably just the steam playing tricks. Definitely not an eye. Right heat envelops you. This is not your average spa sauna. This is heat with intent. The room was designed centuries ago by someone who understood how to cook both chickpeas and men to perfection. Under the floor lies the hypocaust, an ingenious system of flues and fires that channel smoke and hot air through hollow bricks. Persian bathhouses weren't content with simple stoves. No, they turned the entire floor into an oven. And now, you're the roast. A man walks past, trailing a copper ladle and a towel the size of a napkin. His beard is braided, and steam clings to him like a second skin. He nods, like you've passed some invisible test by not immediately running back outside. You nod back, because that's apparently the thing to do. To your left, you notice a niche carved into the wall. Inside is a stone basin, gently overflowing with warm water. It's fed by an unseen source, possibly a hidden cistern or a long-forgotten mountain spring, or, you suspect, magic. You cup the water in your hands. It's soft, somehow. Not just warm, but soothing, like it's been infused with history and old lullabies. You sit on a low bench of polished stone, warm beneath you. Across the chamber, a group of men gather in a circle, not speaking, just breathing together. A kind of silent meditation. One occasionally lifts a small vial and shakes it, releasing the scent of crushed cardamom into the air. Another gently thumps a hand drum against his knee, more rhythm than melody. It's hypnotic. Steam curls through the space like a living thing. It wraps around your shoulders, creeps up your spine, coils behind your ears. It mutes the world. Your thoughts slow. Even your worries about the sandals you left behind, the strange tile patterns, the fact that someone might still be watching you float away. Mainstream historians note how crucial these bathhouses were not just for hygiene, but for social cohesion. In a world without Instagram or therapy, this was where men unburdened themselves. You get the sense that you've stepped into more than a bath. You've entered a temple, a theater, a courtroom. Secrets have been confessed in this steam. Plots have been hatched. Friendships have formed and shattered. Fringe scholars have a different take. Some claim that bathhouses like this serve spiritual roles too, that the manipulation of heat, moisture, and sound was used to induce trance states. There are stories of mystics who would sit in the Garmkhana until their vision blurred and their minds opened to divine messages. One even claimed to have received an entire poem directly from a jinn. Critics say he was just severely dehydrated. You lean your head back against the warm stone wall, eyes closed. Time becomes strange here. You're not sure if it's been 10 minutes or 10 years. Somewhere, a ladle clinks against metal. Someone coughs. The sound echoes oddly, bouncing around the dome like a bird looking for an exit. Then, from the mist, emerges an attendant. His skin glistens, his expression unreadable. In one hand, he holds a small ceramic bowl. In the other, a bundle of herbs wrapped in damp linen. He says nothing, just gestures gently for you to rise. You do. He leads you through another arch, deeper still. The heat becomes denser. The air here doesn't move, it just is. You duck beneath hanging vines of condensation. The walls sweat with you. This chamber is smaller, more intimate. The floor is slightly wet, and every surface is slick and smooth. It's also the quietest place you've ever been. The attendant kneels beside a shallow basin from the bowl. He takes a pinch of what looks like mud and smears it onto a flat stone. He adds a few drops of oil, possibly cedarwood or bitter orange. The scent is sharp but not unpleasant. Then he begins to grind, slowly, rhythmically, like a ritual passed down from a grandmother who always muttered to herself. He lifts the linen bundle, unties it, and reveals what looks like sage and dried rose petals. He dips it into the mixture and begins to press it gently onto your shoulders, then your arms, then your chest. The sensation is odd, warm, wet, and slightly scratchy, like being patted down by a friendly plant. You realize this is more than cleansing. This is preparation for what you don't know. But the way the attendant moves, the care in his touch, it feels ceremonial, as if he's not just washing your body, but waking it up. Historians still argue whether these rituals had deeper meaning, spiritual purification, perhaps? Or maybe it was just a really fancy way of saying you smell terrible. Either way, you feel changed, lighter, like you've left something behind in that steam. A final splash of water. The attendant nods once. His work is done. He vanishes into the haze like he was never there. You stand alone again, dripping and slightly dizzy. And then, just as your knees start to wobble, you hear it laughter, light, echoing, and unmistakably female. You turn your head, and remember today is not men's day at the hammam. You freeze, mid-drip, that laughter musical, lilting, and far too amused to be coming from a man echoes off the steam-washed walls. It isn't close, but it's definitely in the same building. You glance around, instinctively wrapping your soaked linen tighter around yourself, though modesty seems almost comical at this point. It's possible you've made a mistake, or the attendant did. Or maybe this is just what happens when you linger too long and start hearing things. Then again, there's that laughter again, closer this time, and joined by the rustling of fabric, the clink of jewelry, and a chorus of voices with that unmistakable gossip at full volume rhythm. You backtrack, slipping through the steamy corridors until you find yourself in a side chamber. This one's quieter, lit by a brass lantern suspended from a rusted hook. On a wooden shelf sits an array of soaps, each wrapped in linen and bound with thin reed. You pick one up. It's heavy, grainy, gray. It smells like ashes. With a hint of animal, you take a closer look, and yes, there it is. A tiny crack in the surface reveals the truth. This is ash soap. Specifically, soap made from goat tallow, crushed bay leaves, and burnt plant ash. A classic recipe, reliable, incredibly unglamorous, but efficient. Mainstream historians note that soap like this was common in both wealthy homes and public bathhouses across Persia, made in clay vats, stirred with long wooden paddles, and cured in the sun until it resembled something between fudge and brick. It didn't lather much, but it cut through dirt like a noble slicing melon with a scimitar. You rub a bit between your fingers. It leaves behind a thin film of gritty grayness. You think of all the people who have used this same recipe for centuries: women washing newborns, soldiers cleaning wounds, monks cleansing ink-stained hands. There's something intimate about it, grounding. Then again, you now smell vaguely like barbecued herbs, so there's that. A small ceramic bowl catches your eye. It's filled with tiny pebbles, except they're not pebbles. You pick one up and realize it's a soap nut, the dried fruit of a native tree, used occasionally as a cleansing agent when fat was scarce. Crunchy, fragrant, slightly sticky. You imagine ancient bathers debating whether to use the good goat fat stuff or just toss a couple nuts in and hope for the best. Fringe writers claim that certain combinations of ash soaps and plant oils were also used as mild hallucinogens, especially in women-only bath sessions where music, henna, and incense might have blurred the edges of reality. But most scholars say that's pure speculation, maybe wishful thinking by someone who never got invited. Still, the air here feels charged. You move through the chamber, brushing your fingers along a shelf lined with oil bottles. Thick glass, dusty with age, and labeled in faded ink myrrh, fenugreek, bitter almond, rose. You uncork one. The scent hits you like a memory from another life, sweet and sharp, like summer nights or love letters you were too shy to send. At the far end of the room, a woman's slipper sits forgotten, pointed toe, velvet trim, flattened from use. You don't touch it. Feels like bad luck. More laughter. Louder now. You edge toward a lattice screen, just wide enough to peek through. On the other side, you glimpse the women's chamber, a mirror of the men's section, but softer somehow. Draped fabric on the walls, brass trays holding tea, fruit, little cakes. An old woman paints intricate henna patterns on a younger girl's feet while two others argue playfully over who will marry the baker's son. One holds up a bar of ash soap and declares loudly that it smells like a tired goat wearing yesterday's socks. Everyone laughs. You do too. Silently. Historians still argue whether these gender-divided bath days were strictly followed. Some records suggest they were sacred. Violating them was scandalous. Others point to stories, often whispered, of men dressing in women's clothes to sneak into the hammam on female-only days. Not for perverse reasons necessarily, sometimes just for the gossip, the music, the henna, or to hear poetry recited the way it only was among women. There's even a 12th century folktale about a prince who disguised himself with flour, perfume, and a borrowed scarf, only to be discovered mid-scrub and chased out by an angry ant wielding a bath ladle. Whether true or not, it's a tale told with a smirk and probably more than a hint of real precedent. You retreat quietly, the screen clicking as it settles back into place. The air behind you feels heavier, like it knows you weren't supposed to see that. You return to your side of the hammam, soap brick still in hand. You pass a man scrubbing his knees with what looks like bark, and a boy spinning in slow circles to watch the way his towel flares. Life continues. No one seems to have noticed your momentary detour. Or if they did, they're politely ignoring it. As hammam culture often demanded, you take a seat near a low basin filled with warm water and begin to scrub. The soap bites gently at your skin, abrasive but forgiving. Dead skin rolls away in quiet little curls. You're not just cleaning. You're shedding. Bits of the day. Bits of yourself. The parts that don't need to come with you. In the corner, a man with impressive sideburns chants softly as he scrubs, using what looks like a slice of melon rind. His eyes are closed. He could be praying or sleepwashing. You pause. There's a comfort here that goes beyond the temperature or the scent. It's the comfort of repetition, the comfort of doing something thousands have done before you, stripping away grime, quieting the world, letting heat and soap and silence do what time often fails to. You press your back to the stone wall. Let the last traces of ash soap wash down your chest and exhale. There's still laughter behind the wall, but it's softer now, like a dream you almost remember, or a story you once heard, told in steam and whispers. Your arms sag a little now, scrubbed to the point of slight regret, but before you can even begin to consider a gentle towel off and a slow amble toward the cooler rooms, a shadow blocks the lantern light. He's tall, towel-wrapped, with shoulders like a doorway and fingers that crack as he folds them. You're about to nod politely when he smiles in that way bathhouse attendants sometimes do right before they try to dislocate your spine in the name of wellness. You've been spotted by the bone popper. He says nothing, just gestures. You follow, obviously, because your legs are doing that post-hot room noodle dance, and arguing would require effort. The chamber he leads you into is different, still warm, but drier somehow. The stone floor is covered with woven mats that smell of camphor and years. There's a low bench, a jug of oil, and in the corner, a pile of something that looks suspiciously like kneecaps. They're probably just stones. You hope. You sit, or rather, you are placed a firm hand guides your shoulder until you're flat on your stomach, staring at a tile with a faded lion motif. There's a sharp clap. You flinch. That was just him loosening up. Now he begins. It starts innocently enough, a warm cloth laid over your back, a bit of oil smeared along your spine. But then, suddenly, crack. Your left shoulder speaks in tongues. The attendant nods. Satisfied, you grunt, which apparently is bathhouse for thank you. Massage in the Persian hammam wasn't just rubbing muscles until they politely relaxed. It was part ritual, part medicine, part medieval chiropractic adventure. Attendants trained in the art called Dalek knew every curve and knot. More than one traveler's journal notes how a hammam visit often ended with unexpected alignment. Mainstream accounts describe this as therapeutic, effective, even people swore by it. Headaches vanished, joints loosened. One sultan allegedly credited a hammam massage for curing his lympho-fringe. Scholars point out that he also changed wives that year, so the real cure is debatable. Your massage continues. There is elbow work now, and then knee work. You are sat on, briefly, respectfully, but firmly. Your ribs flatten like a rolled-out scroll, then release. Glorious, tingly release. You wheeze something that might be gratitude. The Dalek hums as he moves down your legs, pressing points you didn't know you had. Behind you, water splashes lazily. Somewhere else, someone groans in pleasure or possibly surrender. You're not sure anymore. Then, without warning, he pauses, leans in, whispers a single word in your ear. Crooked, you turn your head slightly, unsure whether that's an insult, diagnosis, or nickname. He taps your hip, presses. Your back realigns itself with a noise like a wooden door giving up on privacy. Better, he says, then vanishes behind the steam, leaving a faint scent of pine resin and victory. You remain motionless for a minute, wondering if your organs have shifted position. But also, you feel good, lighter, like you've been reassembled properly for the first time since puberty. Still, one wonders how many injuries came from hammam overenthusiasm. Historians still argue whether bathhouse chiropractic was safer than medieval surgery. Spoiler, probably yes. Or just better marketed. After all, if you're already naked and steamed. What's a little spinal experiment between strangers? You sit up slowly. Everything cracks again, but gently this time, like your joints are applauding his exit. Around you, others are in similar states of post-pummeling bliss. One man lies smiling on his mat, muttering a poem about bread. Another sits cross-legged, rubbing oil into his feet with the air of someone who's just walked out of battle. You stand, stretch, and feel taller. Not by much, but enough to notice. The tiles underfoot look different now. The light dances more softly on the ceiling. The steam tastes sweeter. A small brass bowl catches your eye, filled with tallow-based balm. You dip a finger in. It smells of turmeric and something vaguely medicinal. Fringe historians once speculated that these balms were secretly psychoactive, used by royal masseurs to open the mind of stubborn viziers. Most likely, it just helped bruises fade faster. Still, you dab a bit behind your ear. Can't hurt. From somewhere behind you, another crack, this one spectacular, echoes through the room. A small cheer follows. Apparently someone's been very crooked. You walk now with a new gait fluid, confident, vaguely oiled. Your body hums. Every joint is grateful. Even your eyebrows feel relaxed. The corridor beckons again. The soundscape changes. Less water, more whispers, fewer splashes, more sighs. You follow the scent of mint and charcoal, moving toward the cooling room. But as you walk, you glance back once at the massage chamber. There's something sacred in that space. Despite the groans and occasional yelling, a surrender, a trust, an ancient belief that the body remembers how to be whole if you just hit the right pressure points or crack enough vertebrae. And now, you're one of the initiated, baptized in steam, rebuilt by elbows, cleansed by soap that may have once been part of a burnt goat. You smile. You were afraid of this place. Remember now, it feels like it's afraid of you. You shuffle onward like someone freshly glued back together. There's a new buoyancy in your step, like your bones are wrapped in silk threads instead of decades of poor posture. The corridor narrows again, and the air cools ever so slightly, not enough to chill, just enough to remind you that somewhere there's a world without mist. You turn a corner and enter a chamber humming with quiet violence. Not the brawling kind, no. This is a room of ritual slapping. Here, status isn't worn. It's whacked onto you with a coarse mitt and an alarming degree of enthusiasm. You've stepped into the scrub room, where pride, politics, and epidermis all get stripped down to their rawest form. A long bench lines one side of the room. Men recline, each attended by a personal Kiza man, the exfoliation expert. These are professionals in the art of peeling you like an overripe plum. Their tools, a thin mitt made from goat hair or rough silk, a bucket of water, and deep-seated generational trauma, apparently. One such attendant, barefoot, towel-wrapped, and sporting a mustache sharp enough to slice bread spots you. He gestures with a flick of the wrist so smooth it might as well be trademarked. You obey. You lie down on the bench, which is slightly too hot and smells faintly of lemon and regret. The attendant doesn't introduce himself. He just nods once, so deeply it feels like a final warning, and begins. First, a splash of warm water, pleasant, reassuring. Then, the mitt, a test stroke across your shoulder, and then slap. You inhale sharply. He follows with another slap, this time across your back. Not angry, not playful, but declarative, like he's saying, "This is who you are now." You glance sideways and see another man receiving the same treatment. He's older, clearly irregular, judging by the serene look on his face as he's being sandpapered into the next dimension. He even raises a finger now and then to direct his Kesa's attention to a particularly stubborn elbow. You're not that brave. Not yet. The scrubbing continues. Long, circular motions. The mitt scours with the finesse of a disappointed grandmother, loving but disappointed. And soon, something horrifying begins to happen. You see noodles, not food, dead skin, little gray curls that resemble soba and haunt your dreams forever. They gather on the bench like the ghosts of sins past. Apparently, this is a compliment. The more you shed, the more you've been purified. Historically, these scrubbing sessions were a key part of hammam culture. purification before prayer, especially on Fridays, demanded the removal of not just dirt, but the spiritual residue of the week. Scrubbing was both hygiene and humility. Some texts even suggest the harder the scrub, the more virtuous the experience, which really just means status equals slap force. That's right. In the heyday of Persian hammams, how hard you were scrubbed indicated your importance. Nobles were slapped harder. Think about that. Somewhere, a prince probably walked around with glowing red shoulders like a badge of honor, smugly displaying how thoroughly exfoliated his rank had made him. And of course, there were competitive bathers, people who pretended not to flinch, hoping others would notice. You can feel the energy in the room now, eyes darting from one scrubbed back to another, a quiet war of stoicism. Your Kesa man steps up his pace. He's moved to your arms now, revealing skin you didn't even know was underneath. You want to protest. You don't. Mostly because you can't move your mouth without inhaling someone else's steam. In between slaps, he murmurs under his breath, a chant, maybe, or a list of chores. It's rhythmic, reassuring. You let yourself drift with it. Fringe historians theorize that bathhouse attendants doubled as informal healers or even spiritual readers, with the kesa mitt being a diagnostic tool. Coarser skin at the neck, for example, meant blocked energy, softer palms, open-heartedness, or maybe just someone who didn't work with sheep. Your attendant lifts your arm and slaps the underside with precision. A puff of old skin floats gently to the floor. A passing breeze carries it away. You're being peeled like a fruit for the gods. You notice a copper mirror propped up against the far wall. It's fogged, but in it, you see yourself red, raw, slightly bewildered, but oddly regal, a little like a lobster who's just come to terms with reincarnation. He finishes with a final slap to your back. Not hard, not soft. A closing statement. Then he tosses a scoop of water over you, hot enough to sting, just enough to feel like punctuation. He nods once. You nod back. You're in the club now. He walks away, mitt hanging like a retired sword at his side. You sit up. The air feels different on your skin now, like you've been unwrapped. You touch your arm, smooth as polished stone. You're glowing, maybe not spiritually, but definitely physically. Across the room, a group of men chat quietly, comparing exfoliation techniques and exchanging compliments like seasoned gladiators. One of them points to another and says, 3 layers, at least. They nod solemnly. It's a high honor. Historians still argue whether these social dynamics in the bathhouse were casual or codified. Were there unwritten rules about who got scrubbed first, who sat closest to the water source? Was there a hierarchy beyond what we understand? Likely yes. These places were microcosms of society, steam and stone reflecting structure and status in equal parts. You rise from the bench, carefully, reverently, as though your skin might slide off if you bend the wrong way. You walk out of the room, not just cleaner, but baptized in slap and mitt. Your sins lie behind you in little gray curls. The weight of 1,000 pores now lightened, and somewhere in the corner, you hear someone whisper, "Next time, get the walnut mitt." You'll think about that for the rest of your life. You float now, less a person, and more a well-oiled thought. Every part of you is buffed, realigned, and mildly traumatized by kindness. And as you step into the cooling chamber, a space designed to ease you gently back into the world of the clothed and the unsteamed, you're greeted by the scent of mint, warm metal, and something unmistakably medicinal clove tea, brewed so strong it could probably resurrect a tired horse. This room is quieter than the others. Low benches line the walls, each occupied by bathers in various states of lounging. Some are wrapped in dry towels. Others sip tea from small clay cups with the reverence of monks mid-prayer. And one man, has removed both his sandals and dignity to inspect a truly spectacular case of toe fungus by lantern light. He sees you looking, smiles with all 7 of his teeth. "Good steam today," he says, wiggling his fungus in agreement. "You feel it in the joints." You nod because words are still difficult and the fungus deserves acknowledgement. He chuckles and pats the bench beside him. You sit, you can't not. He has the confident energy of a man who knows all the rumors and possibly started most of them. He introduces himself as Uncle Ali, although you suspect that's not his real name so much as a role he's permanently assumed. He sips his tea like it's the last potion on earth. Strong. He asks, offering you a cup. You accept. The tea is dark, nearly black, and smells of cloves, cinnamon, and possibly shoe polish. You sip, your mouth tingles, your tongue briefly forgets what decade it's in. Uncle Ali leans in. You know, he says, the Shah's brother used to come to this hammam. You raise your eyebrows, not because you doubt it, but because he expects it. Came in disguise, he adds, as a fishmonger. Very bad disguise. Smelled like rose oil and fear. He winks. Mainstream historians will tell you that bathhouses were gathering places not just for the average worker, but for merchants, poets, princes, and spies. They were the original info hubs, steam-filled rumor exchanges where politics and personal hygiene collided in a haze of mint and ambition. It was said that more deals were made in the hammam than in the palace. Fringe scholars, they go further. Some claim entire political movements were plotted in cooling rooms like this one, that teacups clinked with subversion, that revolutionaries passed messages in soap slivers and stitched secrets into towel hems. It's dramatic. But when you watch Uncle Ali gesture wildly about the time someone accidentally dropped a gold coin into the drain and what that really meant, it starts to feel plausible. You glance around. The cooling room isn't just about reducing your core temperature. It's the social lounge, the bathhouse's drawing room, where freshly scrubbed bodies become open mouths, where secrets soften just enough to be whispered. A boy walks past with a tray of fresh fruit. You pluck a fig. It's warm from the steam and split with juice. You bite in. It's the best thing you've tasted since forever, possibly better than your own memories of figs. Uncle Ali leans close. Want to know the hammam's secret, he whispers. You nod. Of course you do. He gestures upward. The vents. Every whisper carries, if the right ears are listening. You wait for the rest. But he just sips his tea again, leaving you in suspense. Or confusion. Possibly both. You try to focus on your breath. Inhale warm mint air. Exhale the last of your tension. The cooling room has that effect, slowing time. There's no rush here. Conversations meander like the curls of steam still drifting in through the doorway. Someone behind you begins humming a folk tune, slow and circular, like the rise and fall of a wave. Your skin tingles not unpleasantly. It's the contrast between hot and cool. You stretch your legs. They feel like they belong to someone wealthier. Uncle Ali sighs. This is the best part, he says. After the pain, before the real world. He winks again. There's something ancient about that observation, something people don't say in words, but everyone here seems to understand, that the hammam isn't just a place. It's a rhythm, a cycle. Heat, sweat, slap, scrape, steam, talk. You've passed through the fire. Now you float in the smoke. You sip more tea. Your thoughts drift. A man enters wearing a red sash, clearly important. Others nod at him. He nods back, sits, says nothing. His presence ripples through the room like a scent. You wonder what his story is. Merchant, scholar, retired assassin with a passion for grapes. Historians still argue whether these cooling chambers were truly egalitarian, or if status simply reshuffled itself here into subtler forms. Seating positions, who served whom, who told stories, and who was the story. The hammam was supposed to be the great equalizer, but you can still tell who walks like they own the place and who just polish the tiles. A boy brings in more tea. You thank him. He smiles, missing 2 teeth, and darts away. Uncle Ali's still talking now about a man who once tried to sneak a donkey into the hot room. For therapeutic reasons, he insists, nodding solemnly. The donkey had back problems. You're too relaxed to question it. Outside, through a narrow clay vent, The evening air begins to slide in cool and dry. Your skin tightens just slightly in response. Someone nearby lights a small piece of out-of-fragrant resin and the scent unfurls through the room like a sigh. This, you realize, is where the bath ends. Not in the final scrub, not even the oil massage, but here, in this slow, mint-scented space where stories are shared, fruit is eaten, and toe fungus is proudly displayed like a badge of longevity. You finish your tea. Uncle Ali finishes his third cup and begins softly snoring. You don't move. There's no need. You're clean now. And also, somehow, known. You're still sitting in the cooling room when the walls seem to shift just a ripple in the steam, a slight change in the atmosphere, like the hammam is taking a breath of its own. And then you remember what today is, or what it might be, Women's Day. Technically, it's a time slot rather than a whole day, but on the designated women's hours, the hammam becomes an entirely different universe. Same stone, same steam, but completely transformed by scent, sound, and an undeniable shift in gravitational pull toward perfume and story. You rise, curiosity tugging at your towel. The staff is bustling now, replacing linens, sweeping old scrub mitts into baskets, laying out trays of sweets. A rhythmic clanging rings from deeper inside the hammam, where brass trays are being polished aggressively, like someone's life depends on their shine. A young attendant notices your dazed hover and waves you toward an alcove. Not your hour, he says with a grin, but you can peek, if you're careful. You follow, sliding quietly through a passage that smells of orange blossom and vinegar, an ancient Persian cleaning solution that doubled as hair rinse and light chemical weapon. The door ahead is slightly ajar. You pause, lean in, and time slips sideways. It's like walking into a palace made of vapor. Women move through the steam with confidence, draped in towels that function more like capes, adorned in thin gold chains that wink in the lantern light. They own this place. Laughter bounces off the tiles. Someone plays a lute badly. Someone else sings worse, but it doesn't matter. The bathhouse has become a stage, and every woman here is both performer and audience. You catch sight of a circle of women sitting around a mother and her newborn. They're painting the baby's feet with henna, whispering blessings in time with the strokes. One dips a finger in crushed pomegranate and dots the baby's forehead. It's more than decorative, it's protective. Mainstream historians confirm this Persian women's hammam rituals were not just for beauty, but for binding the community. This was where news was shared, warnings exchanged, children introduced, engagements discussed and sabotaged. One bathhouse record tells of a would-be bride overhearing that her future husband still hadn't paid off a camel debt. The marriage canceled, mid-scrub. Your eyes drift to a trio of younger women giggling around a pot of melted sugar wax. One's already mid-application, biting down on a folded cloth while her friend counts, yek, do, SAH rip. Her scream echoes off the dome and is met with applause. She bows. It's tradition. Fringe historians whisper that hammams became safe havens for the bold and the curious, places where women not only removed hair and stress, but inverted social roles. In these hours, the veil came off literally and figuratively. Here, they joked freely, mocked their husbands, sometimes dressed like them just for fun. You think back to a rumor Uncle Ali mentioned earlier that men once disguised themselves to sneak into these sessions. It sounds ridiculous until you see her. In the far corner, just beyond the lantern's glow, sits a figure in a towel wrap, a bit too perfectly arranged. She sips her tea carefully, doesn't laugh with the others, avoids eye contact. She could just be shy, or she could be him. There's a certain rigidity to the way she sits, a way of not belonging too perfectly. You smirk. Even in 10th century Persia, curiosity wore bad disguises. There's a shout something about missing sandals and a commotion near the bath's deeper pool. Several women rush to the edge, peering into the water where a gold earring has fallen. Someone dives after it with unnecessary flair. You glimpse legs, a flash of tattoo, an old tribal mark, from a region far north. Rare, illegal once, worn proudly here. Another group gathers near a tray of cosmetics. They mix pigment with powdered rice, testing colors on each other's cheeks. A girl holds up a shard of mirror, its edges wrapped in thread for safety. In it, she sees herself transformed, eyes darkened with kohl, lips brushed with crushed beet. She smiles, for no one but herself. Historians still debate whether these cosmetic rituals were acts of vanity or self-sovereignty. The line is blurry, but the pride here is unmistakable. Beauty isn't performed for men in this space. It's claimed, traded like gossip, practiced like spell work. Another woman walks past you holding a tray of sweets, dried apricots soaked in rose water, and something suspiciously potent. You blink. She doesn't notice you, or pretends not to. Either way, you are invisible here, a shadow in someone else's story. Then, music rises again, drums now, tambourines shaken like startled ghosts. The tempo builds. Someone begins to dance. Not performatively, but joyfully, inwardly. Her feet slap the tile rhythmically, shoulders undulating like water. Around her, the other women join in, some with hands, some with claps, some with the stomp of freshly henned feet. The air is thick with perfume and power. And just when the rhythm threatens to carry you away entirely, a pair of eyes finds yours. It's the possibly disguised figure from the corner, the maybe man. Her gaze is unreadable, sharp, curious, amused. She lifts a single eyebrow. Then she disappears into the mist. You blink. The music fades. The room shifts. Your heart races, not with fear but recognition. You've just seen something ancient, forbidden, beautiful. You step back from the door. Someone gently closes it behind you. You're not sure if you were allowed to see all that. But the hammam has its own rules, and sometimes it chooses to show you things. Just once. Just enough. You walk away. Somewhere behind you, another drumbeat begins. You smile, and resolve never to underestimate henna parties again. You walk slowly now, as if your skin has absorbed 1,000 years of warmth and your feet are trying not to disturb it. The air shifts once more, becoming heavier, almost dense enough to hold in your hands. You pass through an arch framed with vine-like tilework greens and blues coiled in tight spirals that seem to sway, just barely, in your peripheral vision. The tiles here are older, cracked at the corners, darkened by centuries of breath and heat. You're entering the heart of the hammam. This is the harara, the hottest chamber. You thought you had sweated before. You were wrong. This is different. This is womb heat. An enveloping, total warmth that leaves no corner of you untouched. You take a breath and it pushes back thick with humidity, and somehow fragrant. Not just water vapor, it's rose water, maybe an eucalyptus, and something deeper, something that smells like an idea. There are fewer people here. Most hammam goers treat this room with reverence. This is not where you come to gossip. This is where you come to surrender. The floor is hotter than you expect, almost too hot. You adjust, carefully lowering yourself onto a smooth slab of stone warmed by hidden flames below. You lie back, and you wait. Your heartbeat slows. You begin to sweat in layers, not just surface sweat, deeper. From somewhere inside your bones, a trickle begins. It's not unpleasant. It feels like the pain leaving, like the overthinking dripping out, one salty bead at a time. You remember that the Persian bathhouses used herbs not just for smell, but for medicine. Tiny bundles were hung over the hot water reservoirs. Thyme, lavender, wormwood, anise. Their vapors mixed into the steam, creating a low-dose aromatherapy with every breath. It's likely you're experiencing a bit of that now. Or maybe it's just the room, or maybe it's something else entirely, because that's when the visions begin. A flicker at the edge of your sight, a shimmer that isn't there. The tiles above you start to ripple, like a reflection on water. You blink. Historians still argue whether bathhouses were used for mystical purposes, especially the harara. Certain Sufi sects are said to have conducted trance sessions here using heat, breath control, and focused silence to reach altered states. There are records, half legible, of mystics receiving poems and prophecies inside chambers just like this. Fringe accounts go further. They speak of bathers who emerged changed, calmer, stranger. One tale tells of a man who walked into the harare angry and walked out speaking in riddles. Another never left, claiming he was waiting for the stars to rearrange. You, of course, are mostly just overheated. A voice murmurs nearby, low and slow. You tilt your head. A man is reciting verses from the Rubaiyat, Omar Khayyam's old meditations on wine and fate and the futility of trying to fold time into neat pockets. His voice is the same temperature as the air, warm, slow-moving, almost sticky. You wonder, briefly, if your skin is evaporating. It's hard to tell where your body ends and the heat begins. Even the stone beneath you feels alive, pulsing just slightly with its own internal rhythm. You press your hand to it and it presses back. Somewhere in the haze, someone pours water over a heated brazier. A wave of super steam rolls through the chamber. You inhale by accident. Your vision sparkles for a moment like someone lit a match behind your eyes. You exhale with a noise that might be a sigh, might be a prayer. A shape moves through the haze. A woman, maybe, draped in white, carrying a shallow bowl. She's not in a rush. No one in here is. She pours water in slow loops onto the floor, as if tracing symbols no one else can see. You glance at the ceiling again. Now the tiles look like stars. You're not sure they didn't before. You start to count them, but lose your place after 17, distracted by a patch of green that definitely wasn't green earlier. You close your eyes. Your thoughts drift, less like thoughts and more like fragments. A fig you ate earlier. Uncle Allie's toe, the woman with the gold chain at her ankle, the soap that smelled like something burning. A bell rings, very faint. Not from the room, not even from the building. A street vendor. A memory. You're not sure. You reopen your eyes. The chamber is the same. The stone is warm. You're still here. And yet, you're not. That's the strange part. The harare doesn't take you away. It takes something out of you. The worry. Maybe the timelines, the language that wraps too tightly around your thoughts. It melts, slips, disappears like steam against marble. You sit up, slowly. Your towel is soaked, your skin flushed. You wipe your forehead and feel cleaner than you deserve to. A boy passes, barefoot, carrying a copper tray with small cups of vinegar water, sour and sharp, used to reset the senses. He offers you one. You drink, your taste buds recoil. Then they bow politely. You rise, legs shaky but sure, and step toward the archway again. Your last look at the chamber reveals nothing unusual, just tile, steam, and warmth. The magic is over. Or maybe it's just gone inside you now. You exhale one last breath into the harara, like an offering. The breath curls upward, and then it's gone. You step out of the harara like someone waking from a very persuasive dream. The air outside is cooler, not cool, exactly, but cooler than inside, which is enough to jolt your thoughts back into alignment. Your skin glows, your limbs hum, and your mind still echoes with tile stars and steam-sketched symbols you never quite deciphered. This next room is quiet, not sacred like the hot chamber, not chatty like the cooling room, just still. You're alone here. Or maybe others are present, and the mist is simply hiding them with more generosity than usual. The floor is lined with glazed tiles, cool under your feet, arranged in swirling patterns that draw your eyes forward and down. It's mesmerizing, hypnotic even. And you soon realize you've been following the mosaic without thinking, letting it guide your steps like a path of whispers. Your gaze lingers on the wall now, tiles there too, intricately arranged into floral and geometric motifs. But these aren't just decoration. There's something about the symmetry, the precision, the layers of repetition within repetition that suggests something deeper. You squint. Is that a flower or a star? Or is that a map? You pause in front of a sprawling blue pattern, a series of interlocking hexagons wrapped in spirals and small squares. At first, it looks like random beauty, but then you see it a faint line, looping like a comet's tail, threading the pattern together. Could this be a celestial map? Mainstream historians admit that many tile patterns in Persian bathhouses were more than ornamental. Inspired by Islamic geometry and astronomical traditions, some motifs may have mirrored the heavens' echoes of star charts, perhaps meant to invoke cosmic harmony within the chaotic human body. Fringe theorists go further, of course. They suggest some bathhouses were constructed according to astrological alignments, with hot chambers placed along planetary lines and cooling pools echoing lunar rhythms. There's a wild legend, unsupported, but irresistible, of a 13th century hammam where the tiles were said to predict eclipses. That bathhouse burned down. Twice. You tilt your head. The tiles do seem to pulse slightly under the lantern light. Maybe it's just the glaze. Maybe it's more. You kneel, fingers tracing the chilled ceramic. There's texture beneath the smoothness, tiny grooves, barely visible. A kind of writing, maybe your marks left by the tile maker's hand. It's impossible to tell, but you imagine the artisan, crouched over wet clay, drawing meaning into the walls, not just for today, but for you, right now. One tile is missing, just one, a small, square absence near the base of the wall. Dust gathers in its hollow, and you resist the urge to reach in. It feels impolite, like interrupting a sentence. You glance upward. The domed ceiling is tiled, two gold flecks embedded in dark blue, arranged in radiating lines that meet in the center. From your position below, it resembles the night sky, stylized but familiar. You lie back carefully on a nearby bench to see it better. Stars, or at least the idea of stars. Not accurate, not literal, but the feeling is there. The depth, the silence, the sense of something larger pressing gently at the edges of this humid little world. Historians still argue whether bathhouse tile work served as a form of storytelling, or if it was more akin to silent prayer through pattern. Some say it was simply decoration. Others believe that a society so devoted to mathematics and mysticism would never leave walls so neutral. You tend to agree with the latter. As you stare upward, your eyes trace one tile after another. You begin to notice shapes repeating: a six-pointed star, a mirrored lotus, a hexagon splitting into triangles. It feels deliberate, meditative. You begin to wonder if staring at these patterns long enough would do what the Harara couldn't quiet the mind fully. You hear a soft voice near the doorway, a child, perhaps, murmuring a rhyme. You glance over, but no one's there. You stay lying down. You think of the maps sailors used, how they relied on the stars to find home. And here, in this ancient bathhouse, someone has painted the sky not above but around you, as if to say you are not adrift. You are not lost. The stars are still here, even behind stone and steam. You close your eyes, and for a moment, you're floating again, not from heat this time, but from pattern, anchored not by gravity but geometry. Someone designed this room with care. They made it for you. Not personally, but still you. When you rise, you feel different, not in your skin, but somewhere quieter, somewhere older. You run your hand one last time along the tiles. A chill runs up your arm, not unpleasant, just ancient. And as you exit the chamber, you feel the pull of those patterns still clinging to your thoughts, like you've been imprinted or aligned. You never did figure out if it was a map, but you're certain of one thing. You've been somewhere sacred. You wander on, drifting back into the central corridor. The light feels different now, softer, as though the hammam has decided you've earned a gentler touch. The air smells faintly of wet plaster and cloves, but beneath it there's another note, subtle, sharp, smoke. You pass a side wall lined with latticed decorative brickwork cut into repeating diamonds. You pause. Through the gaps, you hear voices. Not loud, whispers. You move closer. The sound is muffled but clear enough to be intentional. Two men, one older, one not. The older voice rasps he doesn't know about the garden gate before trailing off. You step back instinctively. This wall isn't just decorative, it's an air vent. And suddenly, you realize the hammam listens. Mainstream historians document the use of ventilation shafts in bathhouses to manage airflow, moisture, and temperature gradients. Ingenious, really. Cold air enters through lower ducts. Hot air escapes through ceiling grates, engineering borrowed from Zoroastrian fire temples and perfected in Islamic Persia. But these same systems also carried sound, and that opens other doors. Fringe historians argue that many of these vents were designed not just for air, but for eavesdropping, spying, surveillance by steam. In a society where hammams were the beating heart of gossip, power, and personal drama, who wouldn't want a quiet, secret way to hear it all? You move along the wall, eyes scanning for more openings. They're subtle. Shadows masquerading as brick seams. Some are larger, some barely wide enough for breath to pass through. You find one at head height and lean in. You hear the unmistakable cadence of flirting. A woman, possibly. Her voice is velvet and water. Then I told him, if he wanted my attention, he'd better stop showing up with second-rate saffron. A pause, a low laugh. You step back again. Is this another women's chamber or just a shared vent? The hammam's architecture is intentionally labyrinthine, twisting and coiling like intestines made of stone. You could be standing next to someone through 3 walls and never know it. You glance around. No one sees you. No one needs to. That's the nature of a peephole dilemma. You can't ever be sure who's looking, or who knows. There are rumors, of course. Travelers' journals from the 14th century describe attendants who were paid to accidentally stand in the right place at the right time. A bored merchant's wife listening through a hairline crack in the dome. A young servant sent to dust the arches with orders to report what the soldiers were saying. Historians still argue whether these stories were exceptions or if the entire hammam was designed as an audio sponge. Maybe both. When people gather, someone always listens. And the hammam, it's made of stone. Stone remembers. You keep moving. The corridor narrows again. You spot a tiny wooden hatch above a carved niche, maybe an old maintenance access, or perhaps something more discreet. You can't help yourself. You push gently. It opens with a reluctant creak. Behind it, a narrow crawl space lined with tile. Dry, dusty, just wide enough for a child or someone very determined. The air smells of old ash and secrets. You close the hatch quickly. You've seen enough. You pass a door that leads to one of the upper basins, an elevated pool used for rinsing after the hot room. No one's inside. The water is still. But the echo in the chamber is remarkable. A whisper becomes a sermon. A sigh travels 3 times before fading. You imagine someone here, long ago, rehearsing confessions, or testing a story before telling it to a lover. You wouldn't be the first. In the far corner, an ancient pipe made of ceramic juts from the wall. These pipes ran from the sardab, the cold water cistern, to various chambers, branching like veins. You crouch, put your ear to it. Nothing. Then just faintly a song, a melody hummed in another part of the hammam, carried through clay and shadow. It's off-key. Beautiful. You stand. Somewhere, a door opens. Somewhere else, a slipper falls to the floor. Every sound means something. You press your back to the wall now, absorbing the stone's memory. Did a vizier stand here once, waiting for a whispered signal? Did a mother listen for her son's voice in the cooling room? Did lovers press palm to tile, separated by breath but not desire? The hammam is a place of exposure, but it's also full of hiding places, not just for people, for information, for feelings no one dared to say aloud. You look up. Even the ceiling has tiny alcoves, gaps between tiles where messages could have been tucked. Small tokens, maybe even stolen glances. Historians still puzzle over the intent. Were vents purely functional? Were peepholes a happy accident or an ancient security flaw, or maybe both, as one scholar put it? The hammam was as honest as a mirror, and just as likely to lie. You feel it now, that tension behind the steam, the sense that nothing in the bathhouse ever truly stays private. And yet, you smile. because in that ambiguity lies the real magic. The hammam doesn't promise silence. It promises echoes. And you've just added yours to the wall. By now, you've accepted that nothing in this bathhouse is just what it seems, not the walls, not the water, not even the silence, especially not the silence. So when you re-enter a smaller side room and find a middle-aged man sitting beside a basin, rubbing beeswax into his elbows, you don't question it. You sit beside him. He acknowledges you with a faint nod, then resumes his task. The beeswax smells faintly sweet, with a tang of something herbal, maybe mint, maybe thyme, maybe something invented centuries ago and passed down quietly through fingers rather than books. This, you realize, is the personal care chamber, a kind of grooming corner, a station for final touches. Here, ritual meets residue. He hands you a blob of wax, no words, just a small yellow mound that softens in your palm. You rub it between your hands. It's sticky, warm, strangely comforting. You begin to apply it to your arms, your chest, your jawline. Your skin hums in response. Every pore sighs like it's been waiting for this precise moment of care. He gestures toward a small tray beside the basin. On it, dried lemon slices, rose petals, a bowl of thick gray paste, and what looks suspiciously like a crushed beetle. You hesitate. He picks up a pinch of the paste, smears it on the side of his neck, and nods with satisfaction. "Good for warts," he says. You thank him politely, and lie by omission about any warts. You're not sure what's in the paste. It smells like vinegar and magic. Historians note that Persian bathhouses doubled as informal pharmacies. Attendants often served as folk healers, offering salves for joint pain, scrubs for blemishes, and amulets against the evil eye. They weren't doctors, but they knew bodies inside and out. Fringe accounts go even deeper. Some claim hammams were once tied to proto-apothecaries, where recipes were whispered and passed along like contraband, not just treatments, but charms, cures made from moon-touched herbs and unlucky animal parts. One traveler wrote of a salve that promised to ward off jealousy and lice in equal measure. Which? Convenient. The man beside you dips a cloth in water, wrings it out, and begins to rub his feet with slow precision. He's missing half a toenail but does not appear bothered. He begins to hum. You look down at your own hands. There's a fine reddish smear across your fingertips. You touch the bowl beside you. The water's pink. You freeze. The man chuckles. "Red clay," he says, "mixed with dried rose and sulfur, not blood." You laugh awkwardly, but part of you still wonders. You try a bit of the clay. It's gritty, earthy, and leaves a faint blush on your skin. Used, according to hammam lore, to pull toxins from the body and shame from the soul, or at least to brighten the cheeks. Either way, you now look pleasantly sun-kissed or lightly embarrassed. On a nearby hook hangs a small fabric pouch filled with dried herbs. The label, barely legible, reads something like Nazar repellent. Nazar, the evil eye. It's a common fear in this part of the world. The idea that someone can harm you just by looking at you wrong, out of envy or spite. You remember being told as a child not to boast too loudly, not to wear new clothes without spitting lightly on the hem, so the eye won't catch you. You never really believed it, but you still do it, just in case. The man notices your glance and opens the pouch. The scent is piercing, a mix of anise, dried rue, salt, and something that smells like old thunder. Wear it by the ankle, he advises, or keep it near your sleeping mat. You nod. You will. Maybe. He stands with a satisfied grunt, stretches his arms overhead, and leaves without a word. Just a wet trail of footprints that fade almost instantly into the tile. You sit alone for a moment, then reach for the beeswax again. And that's when you notice the amulet tucked beneath the tray. It's small, round, made of bronze or maybe brass, scratched with lines too tight to read, shaped like a spiral wrapped in a cage. You pick it up. It's warmer than it should be. You slip it into your palm, and the room feels quieter. Historians still argue whether bathhouses were places of spiritual protection or spiritual vulnerability. Were you more susceptible here, stripped of garments and ego, or more shielded by the rituals themselves? Scrubs, oils, herbs like prayers for the body you don't know, but you keep the amulet, and just before you leave the room, you splash your face one last time with rose water and vinegar, not because you believe it will protect you, but because everyone who walked these tiles before you believed it might, and you respect that. You return to the central corridor, walking slower now, not from fatigue, but reverence. You've been steamed, scrubbed, slapped, softened, steeped in vapor and superstition, and now you come face to face with something completely unexpected: plumbing that works better than anything in your apartment. It's humbling, honestly. You stop before a waist-high stone channel, where water flows gently in a perfect line, smooth as glass. It doesn't splash. It doesn't gurgle like a fussy pipe trying to clear its throat. It just moves quietly, efficiently, like it knows exactly what it's doing. You crouch, fingers skimming the surface. The water is cool here, pulled from an ancient Qanat system, underground aqueducts tunneled from distant mountains, gravity-fed, quiet as secrets, built before there were bulldozers, built to last, still working. Mainstream historians agree that Persian bathhouses were marvels of engineering. They didn't just get hot by tossing logs into a fire and hoping for the best. No, the system was beautifully complex hypocaust heating, layered floors with fire channels below, chimney vents above, and hot air flowing like a disciplined ghost. Rooms were placed in specific sequence, cold to warm to blistering, to shepherd the body into relaxation, not shock it into submission. And the water that had its own dance, hot and cold channels snaked beneath the structure, insulated with ceramic tiles, wrapped in clay, sometimes even lined with lime to purify and cool. Separate reservoirs fed different basins. Some baths even had temperature-dedicated spouts, hot here, cold there, mixed in between. No guessing. No twisting 5 knobs to get lukewarm disappointment. You pass one of those pipes, now fat, red clay, and slightly glossy with condensation. It curves downward into a shallow pit where a marble basin collects runoff, filtering it for reuse. Environmentally sustainable. Yes. Accidentally superior to your 21st century showerhead, absolutely. Fringe scholars are obsessed with this. They argue that these hydraulic systems weren't just practical, they were philosophical. That water, in Zoroastrian belief systems, is sacred. It must flow. It must be respected. So the hammam wasn't just using water, it was honoring it, channeling it with purpose, cleansing the body while reminding the soul that nothing is static. You stand and trace a groove carved into the floor. It's shallow but deliberate, one of many runoff channels, guiding overflow away from rooms, down into catch basins or gardens, or occasionally out to public fountains. Nothing was wasted. Even dirty water had a plan. And then you find the boiler room. Well, not a boiler room in the modern sense. No creaky radiators or shrieking pipes. This is a stone chamber tucked into the side of the complex, floor slightly lower than the rest. You peek inside. It's empty now, but the architecture tells its story. A long fire pit at the far wall, blackened by centuries of flame. Above it, a raised platform with hollow tiles beneath those clever hypocaust bricks again, channeling heat like obedient snakes under the bathhouse floor. Beside the pit stands a row of massive copper cauldrons, soot-streaked but elegant. Once, they would have simmered all day, each fed by fire and replenished from the Qanat, one for boiling, one for warm, one maybe infused with herbs. If water had memory, these basins would be encyclopedias. You step closer and notice a bundle of dried lavender tucked behind one of the pipes. Left there recently, a gesture, a prayer, perhaps for continued warmth. You reach for the wall and feel it still radiating heat, hours after the last fire died. That's how well the system works. The bricks hold the warmth. The dome circulate it. The vents breathe it in and out like lungs. Historians still marvel at how rarely these systems failed. Some have lasted a millennium. Contrast that with your water heater, which groans in protest every time someone flushes a toilet. You return to the central hall and spot a maintenance corridor, narrow and low-ceilinged. You duck in. It's lined with inspection points, small clay plugs that once allowed bathhouse workers to check on water flow, fix blockages, or adjust steam. You crouch beside one and see that the plug is carved with tiny symbols, circles, lines, not quite letters. A code or just decoration. A distant voice from one of the chambers echoes, "We'll need more lemon oil," followed by, "and a bucket that doesn't curse." You smile. The system is still alive. Maintained. Understood. Back outside the corridor, a young attendant walks past, carrying a coal scoop in one hand and a ladle of rosewater in the other. You ask how long he's worked here. He shrugs. "My uncle taught me." His uncle taught him. The bricks know before I do. You believe him, because this isn't a building anymore. It's an organism. Warm, moving, breathing through its pipes and chambers, whispering through its vents, circulating water like blood, generating warmth like a memory you didn't know you had. You take one last look at the Kanat basin. The water still flows. No sound, no complaint, just movement. The same movement that flowed beneath poets and paupers, beneath secrets and soap, beneath you. You bow your head slightly, because that's what you do when something sacred keeps going long after you're gone. And then, without really thinking, you whisper to the tile, "Thank you." The drain gurgles, just once, and you walk on. You're moving slower now, partly because your legs are rubber, and partly because there's something about the bathhouse that begs you not to rush. It's not done with you yet. Your next stop is a chamber you hadn't noticed before, set back from the main corridor, half hidden behind a curtain of faded linen. The lantern here is dimmer, tinged green from the patina of the brass frame, and the air smells a little musty, like olive oil and damp wool left in a sunbeam too long. Inside, a single man sits cross-legged on a cushion beside a low marble bench. His back is slightly hunched, his robe patchy with age, and his skin glows faintly green with mold. That's not a metaphor. You blink, and yes, his shoulder is lightly dusted with the kind of speckled, velvety bloom that you might scrape from a damp windowsill in spring. But he doesn't seem bothered. In fact, he looks quite serene, possibly transcendent. Definitely well moisturized. He's a masseur. You quickly realize one of the more experienced ones, judging by the elaborate knot of his towel and the number of little jars arrayed around him. The glass is fogged. Some hold oil, others hard to tell. One seems to contain cloves floating in a dark, syrupy substance. Another has something that might be fingernails. You lie down, because of course you do. There's no safer place to be suspicious than flat on your stomach. He doesn't speak, just begins. His hands are strong, but slow. Not the aggressive chiropractic of earlier, this is something else. Gentle pressure, spiraling into your shoulders like a puzzle being unraveled. Each knot he finds, he holds a moment, then releases, as if he's listening or negotiating. Mainstream historical texts describe the hammam masseurs as a respected class trained over years, often in familial lines. They weren't just body workers, but story keepers. People came not only to heal their backs, but to whisper their burdens into the hands of someone who wouldn't tell. This man, though, is silent. No whispered secrets here. Just slow, careful pressure. Your ribs creak. Your spine clicks softly. A toe you forgot existed is gently realigned. You inhale, exhale, melt. At some point he hums, a melody, low and strange, just a few notes, repeated. It's not unpleasant, it's familiar, though you're sure you've never heard it before. He pauses, dips his hands into one of the jars, and the smell hits you sandalwood, ashes, and something metallic. The oil he spreads across your back is thick, gritty. You think there might be powdered bone in it. You don't ask. Old ways, he finally murmurs. For old knots, you nod, or try to. Your neck is no longer a neck, it's a melted scroll. Then, just as suddenly, he stops, leans in, breath warm on your ear. You want to know the truth, he whispers. Of course you do. He smiles. The kind of smile that means he's seen things no one should and laughed anyway. There's a prince, he says, still buried under the left furnace. You blink. He continues, killed here, poisoned in his bathwater. They say his bones heat the floor even now. I've felt it. He straightens, returns to your shoulders, adds, almost lazily. Or maybe it was just a stray cat, historians argue. You try to lift your head. He waves it down. Doesn't matter, he says. Secrets aren't supposed to be solved. Just passed on, like recipes, or fungus. You glance at his shoulder again. The mold really is impressive. You begin to wonder if he's part of the structure now. A fixture, a warm, muttering pressure point in the hammam's anatomy. Fringe writers speak of living relics, workers so devoted to a place they became myth themselves. There's one tale of a masseur who aged backwards, slowly, until he vanished entirely. Another speaks of a man whose oil cured sadness, but only at the cost of remembering your own name. And then there's this guy. You half expect him to dissolve into steam. Instead, he pulls a final jar from the shadows, smaller than the rest, cracked around the edges. Inside is a mixture the color of amber and ink. He rubs a small drop into the base of your neck. Outro oil, he says. Finishing touch. You exhale involuntarily. Your spine sighs. Your heart slows. He steps back. You sit up. The room tilts slightly, like a boat coasting into shore. There's a pile of towels in the corner, but you realize you're barely wet. Somehow, all the oil, the pressure, the heat it's already inside you, soaked in, accepted. You look around once more, at the jars, the mold, the flickering lantern, and then, quite suddenly, he laughs, not loudly, just a quiet, giddy chuckle, like someone remembering an inappropriate joke at a funeral. You wait. He waves you away, wiping his eyes. Never mind, he says. You wouldn't believe me anyway. You want to press. But the moment passes. The air smells of cloves and something burning. You stand. Nod your thanks. Step outside the room. The moment the curtain falls behind you, you realize you forgot to ask his name, but it doesn't matter. You know who he is. He's the reason your knuckles no longer ache. He's the last step in an unspoken ritual. And if a prince really is buried under the left furnace, you kind of hope the moldy masseur gave him a proper outro, too. You're not sure if you're floating or walking at this point. Your limbs move on their own. Your thoughts trail behind you like steam in a draft. Every surface you pass seems to breathe the stones exhale warmth. The tile work exhales time. It's all alive. You turn into a narrow hallway, low ceiling. No lanterns, and follow it until you arrive at a darkened chamber that hums with drainage. Not gurgling, not flowing, just the subtle suck and echo of water being pulled away. The floor slopes gently inward, toward a wide copper grate at the center of the room. Around it, 5 stone channels branch off like arms. Each one carries water, dirty water, lightly pink-tinted water, and in one case, something a little thicker. You kneel beside the nearest groove. Bits of herbs, soap shavings, and what might be flower petals drift past your feet. But in another trench, there's something else, dark ashes, flecked with white, bone white, tiny fragments. You freeze. This isn't just bath water, it's history running down the drain. Mainstream scholars confirm that Persian bathhouses sometimes doubled as cremation spaces not for full bodies, but for ritual objects. Burned scrolls, broken charms, even locks of hair from mourning rituals. The ashes were washed away as a final offering, mingled with water, carried into the earth. But there are older, less comfortable rumors. You lean over the grate. The water below churns slowly, deep and black, reflecting your face in brief, warped glints. Something glimmers, something round. A small, glittering stone caught in the grate's edge. You reach for it. It's a jewel, no bigger than your thumbprint, a simple cut, faded from time. You turn it over in your fingers. A red garnet, a piece of colored glass. You look around. There's no one here. No attendant, no signs. Just the whisper of water being swallowed. You pocket the jewel. Or maybe you don't. Maybe you place it carefully on the ledge beside the grate. Maybe it disappears on its own. Fringe historians cite accounts of drain room discoveries, bracelets, coins, teeth, sometimes whole daggers, all washed into hidden basins, lost or left behind, depending on who you ask. One traveler claimed to find a gold ring etched with the name of a long-dead Shah. He sold it. Died a week later. Coincidence? Probably. You move to another drain. This one runs slower. The water in it is dark red, almost rust-colored. You hesitate. Dip one finger in. It's warm. You recoil slightly, heart stuttering. But there's no sting, just a strange sense of weight. The water here feels important. You spot a small wooden comb jammed against the edge of the tile. Old, warped, still holding a few strands of hair, black, long. You imagine the person who once used it. Maybe she sat where you sit now, letting the steam rise around her, combing out a braid while someone sang nearby. You leave the comb where it is. Some things aren't meant to be moved. You sit on the ledge, staring into the center grate. You think of all the histories that have passed through here. Not just dirt and sweat, but grief, secrets, joy, memory clinging to every particle, every oily drip, every ash-smudged pebble. A soft gust rolls through the chamber, an old breath, from the hidden furnace beyond the wall. It smells of cedar smoke and something burnt sweet. You remember the masseur's voice. Doesn't matter if it's true, just matters that someone remembered it. And here in this room, the bathhouse remembers everything. You glance up. High in the stone ceiling, there's a vent. Not large, just wide enough to let in air, or let something out. A faint draft stirs the water's surface. It sends a ripple across the reflection, warping your face into something older, wiser, a little haunted. You blink, and it's gone. There's something solemn about this space. It isn't sad, exactly, just settled. Like everything in here has accepted its journey. Even the petals, even the ash, even you. Historians still argue whether these drainage chambers had a ceremonial function. Were ashes deliberately poured here to be cleansed and cycled back into nature? Or was it just the most practical place to dispose of things people no longer wanted to carry? There's no answer, just water, always water. You rise. Your foot knocks something, a fragment of tile, barely larger than your thumb, glazed with deep blue, cracked on one side. You pick it up. It matches the Stargate chamber from earlier. You smile. Everything connects. You press the tile into a notch in the wall where something seems to be missing. It doesn't fit. It doesn't need to. You take one last look at the drain. It gurgles softly. The jewel is gone now. Or maybe it never was. You step out of the chamber, and the air feels lighter, brighter, like the bathhouse has just released a sigh. You look back only once, and when you do, you think you see someone sitting where you just were. Not a reflection, not a trick of light, just a shape, watching the water. And then it's gone. You walk slower than ever now, not from fatigue, but from the sense that something is nearing its end. The bathhouse has wrapped you in steam, scrubbed your history from your skin, whispered secrets through its walls. And now it brings you here. A final chamber, a doorway without a door, no sign, no sandals outside, just silent. You step in. The room is cool, dry, empty. You've left the hammam's inner organs behind the fire-fed heat, the sweating stone, the trickling, whispering pipes. This is a shell, a leftover room, abandoned by time and purpose. Dust dances in the single shaft of light slicing through a hole in the ceiling. The floor is cracked in places, revealing dry earth beneath. A forgotten broom leans in the corner, its bristles worn to a whisper. The air carries the faint scent of stone that's grown tired of being stone. You cross the room. Each step echoed softly in the emptiness. No water here, no warmth. Just the echo of footsteps, your own and others. Long gone. This is what the hammam becomes when everyone leaves. You brush your fingers against the wall. It's cool. Rough. The glaze has flaked off in places, revealing the bone-dry ceramic beneath. One tile holds, just barely. You press it, it wobbles slightly, but doesn't fall. In the center of the room, you find the remnants of an old outdoor furnace vent, long since sealed. A rusted pipe snakes up toward the ceiling, stopped short by a brick someone stuffed into the opening, maybe decades ago. It's a mute thing now. Once it roared, now it listens. You lower yourself onto a cold bench. There's no cushion, no towel, just stone and silence. You wonder who sat here last? Was it an attendant catching his breath, a child sent to clean ash? A woman hiding from something louder than steam? You realize, with some weight, that this room has no name. No records mention it, no diagram shows it. It's the part of the hammam people stop talking about. The afterthought, the bones beneath the heat. Historians still argue whether this space, if such spaces even existed in multiple hammams, served any real function. Some say it was storage, others say punishment. Others still believe it may have been a mourning chamber, used only when someone died inside and couldn't be moved until nightfall. But the truth is, no one knows. You lean back against the wall, look up. The beam of sunlight has shifted. Dust continues its lazy spin, as if orbiting something just out of sight. And then you hear it. The faintest drip. Not the busy drip of bathwater or steam condensation. Just one. Intermittent. Timed like a heartbeat that's forgotten the point. You follow the sound with your eyes. There, in the corner, a clay spout, once connected to the old cold water line, now dry, but beneath it, a puddle, tiny, reflecting the light like a cracked mirror. It hasn't rained, not in days, so why is it wet? You lean forward. You see your reflection there, ghost-like, distorted by ripples that shouldn't exist. You blink, look again, gone, just dust and dry stone. You exhale slowly. You've reached the threshold, the part of the journey where things stop making sense and stop needing to. You've seen every chamber, touched every surface, heard the building's breath, and now the bathhouse lets you go. You rise. There's no formal exit, not here, just a crumbling arch that leads back into daylight. You walk toward it. The light is soft. Not the sun, but the suggestion of it, warm, diffuse. You step through the arch, leaving the silence behind, and there it is. The outside, not the world you left. Not exactly. The sky is paler. The shadows lean differently. The street is quiet, as if holding its breath for you. You look back once. The bathhouse door is closed now. You don't remember anyone closing it. You smile. Somewhere inside, the last curl of steam rises, alone. And maybe, just maybe, someone new is stepping in. Now, as you rest there, still warm from the stone, from the quiet, feel your breath settle, just like the water that has stilled beneath 1,000 fingertips. Yours, too, now sinks into silence. No more echoing slap of the Kiza mitt. No more whispers through hidden vents. No more laughter trailing down damp corridors. Only breath. The kind that stretches long and slow, like a cat curled on a tile ledge at dawn. You can still feel the outline of the benches, the imprint of those long-faded tiles, the scent of rosewater tangled with firewood smoke clinging to the soft corners of your memory. You're back in your bed, but something else stayed behind. Maybe a layer of worry you didn't need. Maybe the sound of water saying it's okay to let go. Maybe just the knowledge that even dust and drainage and ancient pipes can hold peace. Let your shoulders sink deeper now. Let your limbs stretch softly towards stillness. Nothing is demanded of you. Not here. You are clean. Yes, but more than that. You are weightless, and just like the hammam, beneath all the noise. You've always been waiting for quiet. Sleep now, gentle listener. You've earned it.